This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 305, True Stories from the Front Line, an interview with Shane Snipe.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and in this episode, we meet my good friend, Shane Snipe. Shane is a mechanical engineer turned account executive. Shane is the proverbial non-seller seller. We both work out of the Fox.Build Makers space and often talk about the struggles of selling technology. Recently, Shane shared with me a couple true stories of success that he had in 2019. Once hearing these tales, I knew I had to have him visit and spin these stories here on Sales Babble. But before we get to the interview, I want to share an email I got from Tim Redizzle, a fan of Sales Babble. I asked him for feedback on how I could do better, and he said, quote, "I really like listening to the podcast as it is right now. Especially that last episode with Matt is great. I like his story because mine is pretty similar. I think he did a really good job with the structure of the podcast, especially with the weekly sales tips at the end. Give it a nice little roundup." Thanks, Tim, for the support. Really appreciate it. And this week we do have another Sales Nexus sales tip. Make promises, then keep them. Make sure and listen all the way to the end for Craig Klein's sales tip. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Shane. You ready to babble?
All right.
You have a story you want to tell me. Actually, you've already told me the story, but you have a story you'd like to share on Sales Babble. And I really appreciate you coming here today because this is a terrific tale that you have to spin.
Absolutely. So about 6 months ago or so, you and I were sitting together. I was really troubled. I had probably two major accounts that just disappeared. One was 10 million, one was 5 billion per year, and the customers just decided to cancel the projects. Nothing we could do. And my pipeline was pretty much empty. And I asked you, what should I do? And you gave me some good advice, and I wish I followed more of it. But
people do that all the time to me. I give them advice, they don't take it, and then next thing you know, 6 months later, I'm going, remember I said.
So my customer was feeling really upset that they had worked so hard on this application with us, and the customer's management decided that it was not going to pursue it any further. So he felt like he really needed to support us. And so he went to his director and his VP. He said, "What can we do to help them?" And they said, "Well, why don't we do a lunch and learn with them? We'll get them in. They can put their products on the counter and give us a presentation over lunch." And I've been doing a few of these, probably 5 with this customer. And each time it gets a little better. But I've been learning that it's really good to do case studies. So I lined up some case studies. And one of the case studies was this recently failed project that I did with this engineer. And my boss looked at me. He's like, "You sure you want to put that one in there? They didn't buy it. You didn't sell anything. You sure you want to do that?" I'm like, "We supported them really well. There's patents coming out of this project. We created IP for them. We created an invention for them.
But they didn't. But they never bought stuff from you. They never bought any equipment from you.
They bought, some samples. That was about it. Paid some NRE, but we don't make money on NRE.
NRE is
non-recurring engineering. So pay for the engineering. So it was really sad not to go forward with this project, but this engineer really felt guilty. So he helped us arrange this really nice lunch and learn. We got there. This is a $30 billion medical company. And I get into the room. There's 45 engineers waiting to hear my story. And it's exciting. I love to get up in front of people that are my targeted audience.
Yeah.
And so get up there and go through the first case study and the second case study. And the second case study actually was that failed project that I'd been working on with that engineer. And he was sitting in the back of the room, and he stops me mid-presentation. He says, "You know what? I have to say something." And for the next 5 minutes, he explained why we were so good to work with, how we supported him. And I've never had such a great presentation or a great, it was just heartwarming.
He was being a great reference.
On the spot, in front of directors and sourcing directors and all of the engineers that were in the room. And at the end of that presentation, one of the best projects that I've ever had came up, asked us if we would come out and start working with them. And it was hardware, software, everything that we wanted to do. And it was because I took care of this guy. For 2 years, we talked on the phone. We made 3 rounds of samples. We created an invention, something that never happened. It's never been made before. A different way to make a pump. And we had conference calls every week with the team. And you could just tell he was really happy with what we had done for him. He got a really good evaluation from his director that year because we were creating new intellectual property, and it's not easy to come by. And he wanted to repay that, and he did it in spades. It was absolutely wonderful.
Awesome.
And then the other point that way I got out of the hole that I was in this last year, my boss said, "You know what? You can go to some conferences." And the conferences are actually quite expensive. You know, they're maybe $2,000 for the door fee, and then $600 for hotels and whatever else.
We're not talking about having a booth or any of all that, right? That's just showing up as an attendee.
Yes. Now, this is not like the CES conference that is going on this week. This is not thousands and thousands of people. This is maybe 200 people in a room.
In a hotel.
In a hotel. And so you're going to rub shoulders with a lot of people. And this is one of the strange conferences where they actually tell you who's coming ahead of time. So you can see all the people that are coming, and you can request meetings with different people. And a lot of the people are speaking. So their pictures are in the program or on the website ahead of time. Or their names at least, so you can go on LinkedIn and like, oh yeah, I want to see that guy and that guy and that guy. And I had a whole list of people that I wanted to connect with. And so I got there and, going through my list and going from table to table, intermissions and networking time and things like that. And I knew one customer that I wanted to get to. And so it was
a prospect, not really a customer. Not a customer yet.
They are now.
Spoiler alert.
So there's one main target that I had in mind. And so I was walking around through the booths and I saw a product on one of the booths that my product could be inside of. I'm like, okay, this is a good guy to talk to. He knows where the bodies are. And so I went up to him. We talked for a while. We're talking about how to do it and the industry in general. And he's like, you know who you need to talk to? Here, let me give you his card. He gave me his card. He's like, I'll get him to come over and talk to you. And so it was the sales rep for the company that I wanted to sell to. And so he came over. in the middle of one of the presentations, and he passed me the phone number of the purchasing person. He said, "Yeah, tell him I asked you to call." And that was it. The one person I needed to talk to spoke to me for 2 minutes or 30 seconds and handed me a phone number. And I went right back to the hotel room and typed out an email to this purchasing manager. And because it was a warm introduction, a week later, I was sitting in front of him.
Did you CC the sales guy?
That's funny. I did. I CC'd him the first time, and that's just to give some credence and whatever. And then we were setting some things up, and the next time I CC'd him, the sales guy's like, "You know what? You don't need to copy me on this anymore." Whoa, okay. I was only twice, but yes, to lead some credence to my introduction, I copied him. And so I went out and saw this brand new prospect. It was really exciting. Somehow I was supposed to go from Dayton to Chicago by car, and then by plane from O'Hare to Minnesota. And I missed my flight. And I ended up having to drive 12 hours straight to get up there. Got in at 1 a.m. The next morning, got up and did this presentation. And I looked up online about this guy that I was meeting, and saw he had some interest in Ethan Musk and space.
Elon Musk.
Thank you. And
you're interested in Elon Musk too, aren't you?
Absolutely. I read his book. I'm like, you know what? If I go in and if I see a Tesla in the parking lot, I'm going to bet it's his. And so we're talking for 5-10 minutes, and I, kind of name dropped Elon Musk, and see his eyes light up. And I was like, "Yeah, is that your Tesla out there?" He's like, "Oh, yeah."
What's it like?
So we talked about that for 20 minutes. He's like, "You know what? We'll save some time at the end. I'll give you a ride."
Awesome.
I'd never ridden a Tesla. It was so cool. And it's a performance version, so it's like the 0 to 60 in 3 seconds type of car. It's unbelievable. So, but yes, we established a little bit of rapport. And he said it was a very conservative company. But he'd look around and he said, well, maybe I'll give you guys a shot, maybe a trial quote or something like that. I'm like, well, you know what? It's a lot of work doing a quote. So, please give us something that we could at least have a shot at winning. And it took quite a bit of prompting after that, making sure that he followed up on what he said he would do.
What do you mean by that? Like, what's quite a bit?
Probably maybe 4 or 5 reminders.
Emails.
Or
voicemails.
Yes.
Did you mix it up? You mixed it up?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
And I don't want to be, he's going to do me a favor. I'm not going to put him out, but at the same time, I need to show that I care about this. It's important to me, and I want to support him.
What were the styles of the emails? Or the messages? A
lot of reminding, or a lot of, okay, we talked about this. I really like to work on this. Maybe some time pressure because this holiday is coming up, or I know you've got something coming up pretty soon, so let's get it done ahead of that. Or and he was struggling with a convention that was coming up, and he actually got things done a little bit ahead of time of what he had predicted.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I heard the engineers tell me about how he was asking for it because they had no interest in bringing in a new vendor. This was a total cold call. This project had sailed. It's been 2 years that they've been doing work on it. The competitor of mine has been working on it for 4 years, and so it's very late in the game to be trying to get in, but to understand what needs to be done, knowing your competitor, knowing how you can compete against them, where you're stronger. And they said what really impressed them is in this 2-week time that we had from when they gave us the specs to when we gave them a presentation, a proposal. He said it was more polished than what our competitor did in 2 years. So we obviously had that deep background. And that deep background came from that other business that I had lost, 6 months ago. So being able to recycle, so go from failure to to a new win. And so every opportunity, you're going to learn something. And so to be able to leverage that is super important.
It's like that lost client was practice for this one.
Yes. And that all the empathy and all the effort that I put into that lost project came back with that engineer and that great reference. It's a cycle.
Wow. So you were able to kind of wrap this up. You were able to replace those lost clients.
And more.
Oh.
So the 2 clients that I brought in will probably be maybe at least 50% more than the 2 projects that I lost. And that's just what I've discovered so far with it. I haven't yet to go on to the next cycle with those 2, but I'm sure I can bring those forward as well.
So what have you learned in this? What do you know now that you didn't know this time last year?
Well, the conferences, I think, are a gold mine, but you really have to have a good idea of what you want. So who are your ideal customers? How do you make those connections to those customers? Think about it ahead of time so that when you get there, you're not ad-libbing. You're connecting dot to dot to dot because you know where you're going. You know who's good for you. Soon after that, we went to another conference, and I didn't have the same type of preparation. I didn't know exactly who I wanted to work with. I got some good leads, but I haven't landed anything out of that one yet. So I think the preparation is really important.
What else?
So the other part is the customer that gave me the lunch and learn. So this is enterprise business. This is where you have a huge company and you're trying to work your way deeper and deeper into this company,
right,
and leverage the successes that you've had so far. Those case studies that I was providing, I was lucky enough to have 3 case studies from that same customer. One with the person in the room, one with in the same type of business that they were doing. So everybody really could understand. So things like we were able to provide a one-stop shop. So instead of them having to string 5 or 6 vendors together to get a product, we were going to take care of everything. So you weren't pointing at everybody when things go wrong. And that really resonated because they're struggling with that day after day that, oh my gosh, I got 6 vendors in this pipeline. And, if one person doesn't do the job right, then the whole thing falls apart and nobody will take responsibility for it. So to be able to stand up and say, we will take responsibility for it, we will take care of you, it's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about what my customers were really looking for in that process. So that was good.
Awesome. So what take action advice is there here that you have for the Sales Babble listeners, the Sales Babblers?
So a lot of times your customer will call you up and you'll be on vacation. You'll be driving down the road and you don't really want to talk to them at this point. But
I just took a call last week when my wife was driving. She had to listen for your 20 minutes. Yes.
But you take care of customers with your heart. You think about them like your uncle, your son.
Yeah.
How would you take care of family? And that comes back. And it's come back this year in spades, and I really appreciate what this engineer has done for us.
Thanks, Shane.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming here. This is good. This is good stuff. Welcome back, Craig. Are you ready to babble a sales Nexus sales tip?
I am ready.
So, what's this week's tip?
This week's tip is make promises and then keep them.
I like it. Make promises, then keep them.
Seems simple, right? But
It does.
believe it or not, some salespeople don't.
Yeah.
That means we all kind of have a bad rep when we walk in the door. And so it's really important to let your customers learn that you're not like that you can be trusted. So you want to create ways to build trust with them. So offer to do things for them. Simple things. It might be, hey, I noticed that you're, a baseball fan. I read a great book about baseball. How about if I send you a link to that book? Simple stuff. It's not going to cost you a lot of time, not going to cost you any money, but it's just making promises and keeping them. Create as many of those opportunities as you can. Another way to do it is just by listening to what they tell you. When you ask them a question or they tell you what they need, say it back to them. Say, oh, that's interesting. You mean, and say it in a slightly different way. What you're saying to them is, I'm not just here waiting for you to be ready to sign my order form. I'm actually listening to what you're telling me. Again, that's a simple way for them to learn to trust you. Another way is just show up on time. Be punctual. Some people really don't like it when you throw their schedule off. When you promise that you're going to be there at 1:30, be there at 1:30. Or if you can't, let them know at 1:15, not at 1:35.
I love this idea of living in integrity. When people can trust what you're saying, they can trust that you're going to do the same when they become customers.
Exactly. To me, you're just separating yourself from so much of the rest of the world and all of your competitors.
Yeah. How can people find the sales tip online, Craig?
Just go to salesnexus.com/sales, and there you can download a PDF of all of the Sales Babble sales tips and get a copy of our 4 Steps to Market Domination Guide.
Sounds great. Well, thanks a lot for coming back here, Craig. I appreciate it. Can't wait for next week's tip.
See you next week.
To connect with Shane Snipe or to get the Sales Nexus sales tips, you can find links to those in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/305. Don't you know the best way that people hear about the Sales Babble podcast is from listener reviews? If you could go to your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star comment, hey, I would really appreciate it. Word of mouth is how podcasts spread. If you have a question or a comment, you're welcome to reach out to me at LinkedIn or send me an email or go to the homepage at www.salesbabble.com. Reach out. Would love to hear from you. That's all I've got for today. So until next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.